Ha-deez is an indie roguelike made by remarkably huge activities about a teenager trying to escape his father's house so he could go outside, as well as teach the player about the only functioning relationship in Greek mythology. You play as Zagreus, the son of Ha-deez, a god so irrelevant in the Greek pantheon that he got replaced by the god of alcoholism and has daddy issues so severe that he tears through his father's workplace like a bull on crack just to wind him up. Zagreus' goal of touching grass is not an easy one, as you'll need to go through various obstacles at all 4 levels of hell. However, Zagreus is not alone on his journey through the underworld, as you'll meet various characters along the way that will aid him in his quest to acquire vitamin D, such as the gay person in your pewter, a goth MILF, various Olympians with suspicious relationship histories, and if you fail to reach the surface, you could always try again. Death is not only acceptable, it is a core part of the game. You will die, even when you win, and trust me when I say that the House of Ha-deez and its inhabitants will become a very familiar sight. This isn't as annoying as you'd think, as the devs decided to throw in a visual novel that has a word count equal to a George Martin book, and the stories that these characters will tell would be one of the main reasons for you to continue the head bashing that is escaping the underworld. Join me as I tell the tale of Zagreus' quest through the depths of hell, where he makes friends by giving people alcohol, and watch him finally break the proverbial wall that is his father's belt.
Daddy, chill.
Oh, he's tough for an old man.
To hit your father back, you must acquire your own belt, and you have a decent selection of leather straps to use. The infernal arms are recycling equipment designed to make sure that the souls that you kill can be reused in future chambers sustainably. You have 6 of these tools that you can choose from, and they all recycle in their own funny ways. The funniness factor increases when you unlock aspects for the infernal arms, which give them special buffs like loading your cast into the weapon to do extra damage, or using your special to create a large circle that makes you tankier than r/Sino. To really maximise the funny factor, you need to be collecting boons from Zagreus' batshit insane family. Each Olympian in game can give you boons that add bonuses to different parts of your build, like extra attack damage or turning your cast into a laser beam. The issue for someone that is new to the game is that they don't know what to pick. There are 9 Olympians and each one of them has enough boons for me not to bother counting how many they have, so I will quickly and easily tell you whose boons are worth picking up via light bit of misandry. Ignore the men, the women's boons are better. Artemis and Aphrodite give you the most amount of damage, Athena makes the game easier with just a dash, and Demeter, she's alright. In all fairness, Zeus on fast firing weapons puts the game on easy mode, Hermes is either okay or run saving, and Dionysus builds are hilariously fun whether you go for a hangover or a cast build. Poseidon has his dash and cool, which are good, but the rest of his kit is rather lackluster due to bosses not being affected by a knockback, and the less spoken about Ares the better, as his boons are either shit or memes. There's also a not so secret 10th source of boons, Chaos. Chaos does not work like any of the Olympians. The first difference is that you have to enter their cumpit, which spawns randomly, and the second difference is that the boons you're offered come with conditions. For a certain number of encounters, you have a malice. Once that is over, you keep the bonus. The bonuses can be extremely strong, and the malices can completely fuck you over, and sometimes you just get shit you don't even want or need. Either way, every time you step into the cumpit, it is a gamble, and one I'd say is worth taking. You'll need all the help that you can get to complete your mission, as unfortunately for you, there is an entire mythological underworld standing in your way, with each level being filled with enemies with the goal of throwing you into the river Styx. Knowing what your enemy does is important, so I'll roughly go over the enemies that will want to deliver Zagreus' arse back to his father's house. The underworld is split into 4 layers, each having 12 chambers. 10 where you fight enemies, 1 where there is a guaranteed shop ran by him, and the last chamber is for the boss. Tartarus is the starter level of Ha-deez, and it is filled with orange people, crystal meth, and Bosnians. The regular enemies here are slow and easy to predict, so the hardest things that you'll face here are the sneak and Tartarus' boss, Megara. Megara looks intimidating, but she's fairly simple to understand, as her attacks boil down to big circle, line attack, and spawn random shit. Sometimes you will get to fight one of Megara's sisters instead of her, which in all honesty are just worse versions of the Megara fight, as they don't really add anything. As for the sneak, it will just teleport around the map and tell you to get fucked. Asphodel is filled with former IRA members and snakes, but the most dangerous thing you'll face there is the environment. Not the skeletons throwing bombs at you, the spicy rock juice. The enemies themselves can take quite a while to get used to, and some of the mini-bosses in Asphodel can be quite brutal. There's one mini-boss room where a bunch of rapid-fire witches spawn and you get the full Ceausescu experience. As for the boss, you get to face the skeleton of the Lernian Hydra, or Lerny as Zagreus ends up calling it.
Bone Hydra. Can I call you Bone Hydra? Lerny, maybe? Lerny, I like that.
Lerny is fairly easy to fight as you have a lot of space to move around and dodge attacks from the heads that pop out of the lava. Brute force can work against Lerny, but it will cost you as Lerny does have attacks designed to get you to fuck off. Elysium is where brute force is no longer an option. Everyone does too much damage to face tank hits, so movement is the key to survival. In mythology, this is where all the great warriors go when they die, and knowing ancient Greece, a lot of these guys died in a stupid war for the last femboy on Lesbos, and they have not forgotten how to do their jobs. The boss of Elysium comprises of two characters, Theseus, the most arrogant prick alive, and Asterius, the Minotaur, who is notably more chill. Both of these guys do a lot of damage, and you need to beat them both. Theseus is especially annoying to fight as he has a shield, meaning frontal attacks do fuck all, and when he falls below half health, he cheats by getting the gods to do his work. Asterius is much easier to deal with as all you need to do is run away when he attacks unless you want your organs to be flattened into a 2D object. The Temple of Styx is the final level before you go outside, so it's a bit special. You enter a hub area that has a shop where the funny man is, 5 tunnels, and a large red dog standing in the way of the exit. The idea of Styx is that you have to travel down the tunnels to find some dog treats to bribe Cerberus so you can move out of the way. RNG is your enemy in Styx, not the rats and the satyrs, as after the first tunnel it is completely random when the satyr sack will show up. In my experience, it shows up after the second tunnel I picked, but sometimes the game decided I need to go through more tunnels to find the sack. This wouldn't be a problem if the enemies were fun to fight, which they aren't. Once you've found the bag of treats and given it to your dog, you can finally leave the underworld and face the guy that the game is named after. Ha-deez is what I would call a big lad, and he's big in other departments too, like the damage he does when he disciplines Zagreus and his big fuck off health pool. Ha-deez's health bar might as well be a health pole with how large it is, and you need to get through it twice. Yes, this boss has a second phase, and he even has a third if you hate yourself, but I will get back to that later. Beating the large gentleman in front of you requires thoughtfulness and patience, as he can teleport around the map and his attacks will drop your health faster than the pound. So I suggest that you apply the pattern recognition that your chimpanzee brain has evolved to do over the past million years to use iframes so you don't get swiped by Ha-deez's comically large fork. It's not just the oversized kitchen utensil you need to watch out for, as in his second phase, Ha-deez can summon forbidden jars that stun you, as well as harnessing the power of the sun to make you flee in fear of the power of radiation. Once Ha-deez has been beaten for the first time, two things will happen. The first is that when you return to the house of Ha-deez, you are confronted with one of the greatest evils man has ever created, a legally binding contract. You have to sign a piece of paper to get the shit you need to progress. The idea is that you choose what part of the game you want to make harder for yourself to get rare currencies from bosses. Every time you escape, the heat requirement to get the stuff you want gets higher. Opting out is also viable, as instead of dropping fun stuff like Titan's Blood, bosses will drop darkness when you kill them, and the amount they give you would seem rather generous if it wasn't for how expensive mirror upgrades are. The second thing that will happen after you beat Ha-deez is that you enter Greece when you leave the boss chamber. It turns out Greece is fairly cold and linear, and when you reach the end of the land of the rising dead, you enter a bright garden which has a woman tending to its plants. This is Persephone, Zagreus' mother, and she thought Zagreus was fucking dead and ran away in her grief. The story of Ha-deez is a modern retelling of one of the most famous myths in Greek mythology, which has some rather unfortunate names. To briefly summarise the myth, Ha-deez kidnaps Persephone, Demeter gets mad and freezes everything, Ha-deez allows Persephone to leave but binds her to the underworld by feeding her pomegranate. Persephone is allowed to spend half the time in the year with her mother and the other half with her husband, and when Persephone isn't around, Demeter gets sad and makes everything cold again. Ha-deez goes into more depth than what I described. It follows a less disturbing interpretation of the myth where Persephone willingly went into the underworld and became Queen of the Dead. However, if you've noticed everything outside of the underworld world is cold and snowy, you'd realise that we're about here in the original story. Just reaching Persephone is not the end of Ha-deez' story, as she'll need to be convinced to come back, because as it turns out, the death of her firstborn son is rather traumatic. The reason why Zagreus is alive is due to the intervention of Nyx, with her pulling strings of her bitchy daughters. But it came at a cost. Zagreus cannot leave the underworld for that long and will eventually die in the overworld and respawn back at the House of Ha-deez. This means you'll have to fight Ha-deez 9 more times so you can gradually convince Persephone to come back. When you do eventually convince her to come back, you'll sail down the river Styx on Charon's boat with Persephone. However, whilst Persephone returning is the main goal of the story so far, the game is not over yet, as there's still the epilogue to get through. The epilogue has you tackle the problem of lying to the Olympians about trying to leave the underworld and what happened to Persephone. And the way this is solved by Persephone is to have Zagreus befriend the Olympians, invite them all over to a party, and then lie to them about the lie. This works, and a deal is struck between the underworld and Olympus. Persephone has to spend half the year on Mount Olympus and can spend the other half with her family in the underworld. If completing the epilogue isn't enough for you, there is all the side stories to complete, which are done by giving the side characters drinks and doing something for them, and then giving them ambrosia to complete their affinity bar. This applies to these lots, but not to these two, as they can become love interests. Their affinity cap is higher as you can romance them, and you don't need to choose between them, as if you romance them both, you could start a 3-way. I did not do this, partly because I was saving nectar and ambrosia for the epilogue, and partly due to me having a negative opinion of Thanatos from other games. Whoa! So I chose to just romance Megara, and the ending of that romance arc was the most surprising thing in the game. Not the fun gameplay or the sincere story. I expected those things. No, the most surprising thing in Ha-deez is that Zagreus is a bottom that likes to get whipped. Wow. And on that note, I will end the video.